two experienced politicians, former state and city lawmaker Ron Menor and current State House Minority Leader Val Okimoto, are in a runoff for the open District 8 seat on the Honolulu City Council, which runs from Waimalu to Mililani. Meanwhile, Democrat Natalia Hussey-Burdick and Republican Kathy Thurston face off in the race for State House District 50, covering parts of Kaneohe and Kailua on Windward Oahu. Tonight's live broadcast and live stream of Insights on PBS Hawaii start now.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Yanji Denise. Tonight we're speaking to candidates looking to hold a seat at the Honolulu City Council as well as a seat in the State House. First, we focus on Honolulu City Council District 8. The district includes parts of Aiea, Pearl City, Waipio Gentry, Waimalu, and Mililani. We look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can email us or call with your questions. We also encourage you to get involved with the conversation on our Facebook page happening right now. And now to our guests. Val Okimoto served 4 years in the State House of Representatives. Prior to that, she was a special education teacher. She's also a graduate of Brigham Young University, Hawaii, with a degree in accounting. Ron Menor served on the Honolulu City Council from 2012 to 2020. He has also served in the Hawaii State House and State Senate. Outside of public office, he's also worked as an attorney. Thank you both for being here tonight. We appreciate you joining us. Ron, I want to start with you. What do you think is the biggest issue facing this district, and what would you do to address it?
Well, quality of life issues are critical to the residents of District 8. These include fixing our city roadways and other infrastructure, creating more affordable housing opportunities, especially for our young people, addressing our homeless crisis more effectively, increasing support for our police and first responders to combat crime, including filling the approximately 300 vacant police officer positions within HPD, and ensuring that city government fulfills its primary responsibility, which is to provide the full range of important core services and improvements that our communities want and need. And I'm very attuned to the issues affecting the District 8 because of the fact that I represented large parts of the district as a former city council member and state representative. Moreover, I've devoted countless hours volunteering for civic causes and supporting numerous community organizations. And the time spent in the community has really given me an in-depth understanding of the needs and concerns of the people whom I represent. So these will be the issues and areas that I will be focusing on if elected to the City Council.
Val, what's your take? What do you think is the biggest issue facing the district, and what would you do to address it?
Thank you, Youngji. I just want to thank you and again, PBS for allowing us to have this candidate forum tonight. One thing that I've always decided was going to be important for me when I decided to run for public office was to get boots on the ground and go door to door and meet people in the community. So when the district for this council area changed, I wanted to know, okay, I've represented Mililani, what does the rest of the district, how is it similar, how is it different? And there's similarities and differences, but one of the things that I hear going door to door is definitely the cost of living, as well as crime. And that's all tied into, homelessness and other factors, but the cost of living here in Hawaii is really what everybody's struggling with. I face this myself. I'm a single mom of 2 girls, and so I know how difficult it can be to be able to afford to live here. And when I think about the future of my daughters, I want them to be able to sustain a living here. And that's what the people in the district are faced with as well. How can we provide a future for themselves and their keiki and future generations? How can we support ourselves day to day? The cost of living here is very, very important. And then along with the crime, and that's something that's been increasingly occurring. You see it in the news. So those are issues that our district in District 8 is really focused on. The community members have shared that input with me.
Just to follow up on that, the affordability issue, it permeates sort of all aspects of our lives, especially with inflation, affordable housing. We hear about this a lot, but what specifically do you think that the City Council can do to address some of those concerns?
One of the things I'm really passionate about, and is exciting for me about this district, is that we can have opportunity zones. So this is something that's federally funded, actually. There's funding from the federal government slotted just for this district in Pearl City and parts of Waipahu that can create not just homes, but jobs and new industries. And that's something that's exciting to me, again, as a mom of daughters who are in the school system now. What do their futures entail? So in the City Council, we work with these projects, and I'm very excited, and I know that the way I deal with and I work with people, working with developers, working with our community, how can we create jobs? How can we create industries that will keep our children here, that they're not taking their talents and their knowledge and leaving our state? That's how I feel that's the City Council, and that's what I plan to do if elected, to be able to have these opportunity zones and take advantage of them, create opportunities, not just for housing along the rail route, but creating industries that will have our children be able to stay here. And we can address the housing issue at that time as well.
Ron, what do you think the City Council can specifically do to address the affordability issues that so many residents are facing?
Well, clearly, city government must do more to create more affordable housing opportunities for young people. During the time that I served on the council, I worked closely with city officials, affordable housing developers, to facilitate the creation of more of these opportunities, especially for our young people, who include my 3 sons. And as a former policymaker, I also recognize that there is no panacea, that it's going to take a multifaceted approach, which should include, for example, approving more housing projects through the 201H process, which is an expedited review and approval process under state law, utilizing more city land, providing financial and other incentives for affordable housing development, developing and implementing rent-to-own housing options on the city level, tapping our city's affordable housing fund to purchase and refurbish properties for affordable housing, rehabilitating our city's large inventory of affordable rentals, as well as more effectively enforcing our short-term rental ordinance, which I helped to co-author, to reduce the number of illegal vacation rentals and remove housing stock from the communities. And finally, again, city government must do more. They've got to do a more effective job in making improvements to our permitting system. And as a city council member, I consistently urged Department of Planning and Permitting, or DPP, officials to resolve the lengthy delays in the permitting process, because they significantly add to the cost of housing. So these are the kinds of specific action steps that have to be taken by the city government, and that I'm committed to continuing to pursue and to work on if I'm afforded the opportunity to serve on the City Council.
Let's stay with that, because it's something that you identified in your opening statement and also just now, this idea of what's happening at DPP. The mayor has said that they are thousands of permits behind. He just lost, of course, the head of that department, and now they have so many vacancies there. What do you think can be done in the short term to address those issues there?
Well, during the time that I served on the council, there were a number of actions that we took that I want to follow up on. First of all, I strongly supported the inclusion of funds in DPP's budget to create more staffing positions to review and process permits. And that's something that I'm committed to doing if I'm elected to the City Council. Moreover, before I left the council, I also joined my colleagues in approving Resolution 18-284, in which we directed the city auditor to conduct a performance audit of the permitting processes of the Department of Planning and Permitting, and to provide recommendations for corrective actions to improve the system. So one of my top priorities, if I'm elected to the council, is to get together with DPP officials to determine the extent to which they've implemented the recommendations of the city auditor. And finally, I would also note that the City Council recently adopted Resolution 22-93, which once again requests the city auditor to conduct another performance audit, but this time to look more comprehensively at DPP's policies, procedures, and controls to address the systemic operational deficiencies within the department. So if I return to the council, I'd like to follow up on the city auditor's findings and recommendations in that regard.
Okay. What do you think can be done for DPP, given the myriad of issues that agency is facing?
It's easy to say. I think my question when I think about DPP, I'm like, how did we get to this point? Because it's been years. I don't know where it fell wrong, but we need to address the issue of the hiring process. Obviously, there's something that's going on that shouldn't be happening, where we are short of hires. We need people, we need employees who can cut through this red tape. We have layers upon layers of bureaucracy, which make it very difficult for our local residents, our developers, to complete projects, and that's not acceptable. And I am going to be new to the council, should I be elected. I don't understand how we got to this point, and I would like to find out why. What led us to this point, and I think we need to really stop talking and actually get to stop talking. That's what I feel like. The action needs to be done. We need to fix this process. And it's easy to say things, but why hasn't it been fixed? Why is it to the point where we are having such red tape and our department heads leaving, and we're still left with this process that's impacting our local residents because we can't build properties. We can't build things. It's affecting the housing. It's affecting us as homeowners here, and it's affecting jobs. And so I really feel like we need to stream upline, look at the top and work our way down and minimize whatever the bureaucracy is in the hiring process. HR needs help, and whatever resources the department needs, we need to allow them to have it so that they can fix the issues. I would love to find out what caused it to get to this point.
Let's talk about rail for a minute, and we could probably spend the whole show talking about rail, but let's, the rail, of course, is a huge part of your district, and tell us a little bit about, are you satisfied with the way this project is being run at the moment, and what are your thoughts about where the rail should go to?
Thank you. You know, rail is such a sensitive topic for the communities here, and I think when I talk to the people in the district, there are mixed feelings. However, because the district is so big. However, just like me, when you start a project, I was raised, you finish it. And I think most of the people in the community want to see it finished. Where the public has issues with is the mismanagement of funds. And that's, again, stemming back some time. We're not sure exactly where the project fell, where it got off the tracks. And now we're having to pick up the pieces. I do have hope and faith in our current leadership and in the commission. I think that they're trying really hard to be able to finish this project. I would love to see it finished. I just want to make sure that whatever happens moving forward, we are making sure that the taxpayer dollars are spent, with accountability and expedition. We're finishing this project in the proper manner, and we're not going to burden our taxpayers anymore. So whatever needs to be done to make sure that this is done properly, that's what I think the public is owed. We need to finish this project. And again, I think there's a plethora of opportunities along the rail line that we can really take advantage of.
What are your thoughts on the way the rail project is being run at the moment?
Well, let me just first of all say that in regards to rail, I've been a supporter of rail, but I believe that the scope and extent of future construction of rail should be based on what the city can afford. So in that regard, my position on rail is that the city should continue, HART should continue to build rail to the Kaka'ako Civic Center station location. If the projections of HART are accurate, that the actual and projected revenues will only be sufficient to cover the construction costs to complete rail to Kaka'ako, the Civic Center location, as an interim terminus. I would also like to see alternate design and engineering solutions be considered, including eliminating non-essential features at the rail stations that add considerable cost to the project. In regards to the management of rail, in the past, I have had great concerns about the way rail has been managed by HART in the past. Council member, during the time I served on the council made decisions and took actions on rail that were based on information that we received from HART and other city agencies, which have proved to be incomplete or just simply incorrect. In addition, what troubles me is the fact that no one has been held accountable for the numerous issues that have been identified with respect to the rail project, including design mistakes that's going to cost the city time and expense and also raise significant and concerning safety issues. So if I'm elected to the council, I will propose that the City Council conduct a public hearing to go over the recent revelations about ongoing problems with the rail project so that we can get more specific and concrete answers from HART officials.
I want to go back to one of the things you talked about at the start, and that was the staffing issues, not just at DPP, but we see it across the city. We have a police officer shortage, of course, and other core services, EMS, ocean safety. What do you think can be done to address those hiring issues? What does the city, do you think, need to do, and what specifically can the council do to attract more qualified workers?
Well, I'll tell you, the city government has to do more to address the issue of vacant positions. At present, we have approximately 2,000 vacant unfilled positions in city government. And this not only impacts the quality of the delivery of services that we need to be provided to our communities, but in addition to that, these positions, if filled, could create job opportunities for local residents in our community. So clearly more needs to be done. So in that regard, I am gratified about the fact that the City Council recently adopted in July Resolution 22-43 that is going to direct the city auditor to conduct a performance audit of the selection and hiring processes within the Department of Human Resources and to provide recommendations for improvements within that system. So one of my top priorities if I'm elected to the City Council will be to follow up on the findings and recommendations of the city auditor, because it's my understanding that the auditor will be submitting a report to the City Council sometime next year. So that's an issue that I'd like to follow up on and continue my work on as a council member.
Val, what do you think the city can do to best attract these qualified applicants? Because we are talking about hundreds, if not thousands, of jobs that are unfilled. That not only affects city services, it also affects the current employees who then have to shoulder that load.
Correct. Yeah. We know that we need to hire more. It's easier said than done. In my experience in being in office the last 4 years, the one thing I really recognize and I stand by today is we need to support our law enforcement. I've been a part of a legislature that actually a body that hasn't always done so. So why would these hardworking individuals and their families sacrifice so much and stay here? First of all, the cost of living is extremely high, and then their jobs are under such scrutiny, and their families are not cared for the way that they should be. So we need to support our law enforcement. But I also want to mention that we can increase rate pay and we can have all these incentives, but we need to address the bigger picture. If our law enforcement, if they can't afford to live here, if their salaries and the cost of living here they don't correlate with each other, then we have another issue. So on the city council level, we need to, again, create a healthy economy. That's really my passion. What can we do on the economic level so that we can attract these qualified law enforcement officers? And not just them, any public servant, teachers, educators, anybody who decides to choose a career in public service. I was a former teacher. I understand, again, the service that it requires and sacrifices. So along with law enforcement, all of these public service positions, how can we make sure that we have an economy that will allow them to stay here, make sure that their jobs are secure, and ensure, especially with the law enforcement, that when they choose this career path, that we are not going to make it more difficult for them to have their jobs, but provide safety nets for them, provide support for them. That's something that I think we should do, and I tend to do, and I plan to do and support them as a city council member.
Let me ask you about homelessness. It's an issue across our state. What do you think that the council can do to better address this issue?
Yeah, homelessness is a touchy subject because we're a caring community here in Hawaii. We tend to love all, and so we want to make sure that we take care of all of our ohana. I think if you just think about homelessness as we're going to just create housing opportunities for them, you're not going to solve the problem. Homelessness is a bigger issue, and I want to take a treatment approach. Treatment. We have to have a treatment plan for them. Much of our homelessness, the people that are houseless, they suffer from some form of addiction or mental health illness, or sometimes both. So we need to really take an approach to make sure that we're providing resources for them. If we're just creating housing opportunities, that's just a Band-Aid on the issue. We need to address, how can we create opportunities for them to get the help that they need to address the root of the problem. And when we do that, that will, again, create a better future for them. And I want to, this is something that's really a concern of the communities of this District 8. And when you walk door to door, you hear it, and I feel it too. They say, 10 years ago, you didn't see anybody homeless. And now the residents are afraid to walk with their grandchildren. They're afraid to go to the park. And that's something that should never happen. So as much as we are a loving community here, we need to address the issue of these homeless citizens who are now turning to violent crime. So we need to make it so that this is not acceptable. If someone who has repeatedly committed crimes and are back on the street, and they're back on the street repeatedly doing things, it becomes an endangerment to our communities. And that's where I feel we need to, as a city council and law enforcement, we need to work together to make sure that we're providing safety nets, safety precautions, anything to protect our communities, but take these citizens who obviously need help and provide them with the resources that they need so that they're not hurting people and not hurting themselves.
What do you think we can do about homelessness? It is such a complicated issue.
Right. Well, the homeless issue is one to which I devoted considerable attention as a city council member. For example, I frequently work with city officials, social service outreach workers, HPD, and community stakeholders to clear homeless encampments within my district and to reconnect individuals and families to social service providers and shelter facilities where they could receive the assistance that they needed. As a former policymaker, I also recognize that there is no single solution. It's a complex problem, and that it's going to take a range of solutions, which I believe should include relocating homeless individuals and families to temporary low-cost shelters where they would also have access to services and treatment for mental health and addiction issues that contribute to their homelessness. And I look at the Kahale Tiny Homes project in Kailaloa as being an example of that. The city also needs to support proactive social service outreach to the homeless. The city also needs to continue to provide Section 8 and rapid rehousing rental assistance for individuals and families who cannot afford market rents. We also need to engage law enforcement, the police, in situations where illegal activities are occurring within homeless encampments. I also want to see us improve the Assisted Community Treatment, or ACT, state law to facilitate the treatment of chronically homeless individuals who suffer from severe mental illness and substance abuse problems. And of course, we just need to build more truly affordable housing. So those are the areas that I worked on as a city council member, but clearly more needs to be done. And if given the opportunity, I want to continue to work on that very difficult and complex societal issue.
You know, you both obviously care very deeply about this district. You have a lot of policy stances on the issues, but I'm interested to know, what do you think makes you uniquely qualified to hold this seat?
Well, you know, I'm running for the city council because I want to continue my work in addressing the critical issues facing our island. And you know, our island, our city, faces significant challenges, which I believe requires effective and experienced leadership, which I have established through my work record as a former city council member. So I would be able to hit the ground running and not have to learn about city government while on the job. You know, I remain committed to public service as a way to give back to the communities in which I've been fortunate to live, work, and raise my family. I've always been a strong advocate for positive changes and improvements that our communities want and need, and I will continue to do so if I'm afforded the opportunity to serve once again on the City Council.
Val, what do you think makes you uniquely qualified for this position?
I think what makes me unique is my raw, fresh approach to government. I don't come from a history of politicians. I ran for office 4 years ago because I have a heart and the passion to serve the community, and I'm continuing to do so. And I really believe that the community, our communities really are looking for new leadership, for a new generation, a fresh approach, and someone who's maybe 4 years ago, I had no idea what the legislature was, but the difference between me and many others, or I think what makes me special is that I will hit the ground and I will figure things out. I'll surround myself with the right team. And with no disrespect to anyone who has served before me, but I think our state is looking for something for the future, the next generation, and that's what makes me unique. I'm born and raised on the island of Kauai, so I understand local values and culture, and I take that with me in everything that I do. And if I were here just to hold a title, I think I would have just done a different path. But I'm taking this risk because I want to give the people an opportunity again to have a fresh voice, someone who will listen to them, someone who is constantly working day and night to hear what their concerns are and learn about what they need and figure out how I can help them. That's what makes me unique. This is not about me. It's never been about me. And it will always be about the people in the community. My passion and my heart is for the people of this island and this state. I'm just a local kid, a mom, former teacher, and that's what makes me unique. I think I bring to the table different things that make me just from the community, which I think is what our residents are looking for right now.
And we have just a few minutes left, so I want to ask you one question, the final question, which is, you know, we can read about you on your websites. Of course, we know your resumes, but what's something that you wish people knew about you that they don't necessarily get? You know, I know you both go door to door. When you have those one-on-one interactions, what's something that you tell folks that they might not glean from your website?
Oh gosh, okay. One thing that they may not know about me, I've already shared my passion, you know, for being a local kid. A fun fact, I grew up and I love playing basketball. I don't get to do it as much anymore because this public service life has taken me in a different direction. But I think that's one of my favorite hobbies, and I have two daughters. Neither of them have picked up the passion for basketball, but I see basketball as a way, the things I learned as a team player when I grew up playing sports on that little island next door to us is, you learn how to get along well with others. You learn discipline, you learn sacrifice. And somebody asked me once, what's the difference between you and many others? I have grit and tenacity. I will work harder because if I believe in something, then I will work my hardest to get it done. And that's something that came from even my basketball background, where my dad was my coach and he was pretty hard on me. So I had to learn, you just tough through things and you work your hardest. And so that's maybe something that people don't get to know because you don't see me playing basketball as much anymore.
We certainly don't, but we would love to see it. Ron, what about you? What's something that you wish people knew about you?
I play the drums.
Do you really? I did not know that.
Yeah, I do, and it's a great hobby. But because I got into music to that extent, it also has given me an appreciation for my three sons, who also have their own musical abilities. They're good singers. One of them used to play the piano, and it just makes me proud that I can get together with my sons and we have a special appreciation for music. So. I'm a family man, very family oriented, and I suppose that's why I'm running, because I want to create a better quality of life and a brighter future for all of the families here on this island.
Okay, well, thank you both for being here tonight. We want to thank our guests, of course, the candidates for Honolulu City Council District 8, Val Okimoto and Ron Menor. We get ready for our next segment right now, featuring State House District 50. And while we do that, please do enjoy this Hiki No story. We'll be right back.
The Hawaii Department of Education is responsible for serving more than 100,000 meals a day during the school year. This is made possible through the efforts of the school cafeteria staff and the contribution of money towards the National School Lunch Program. According to the Congressional Budget Office, the Federal Reserve has more than doubled the spending on child nutrition programs to $20 billion a year to reimburse schools for children's meals. But the price of a school meal has increased and some students are unable to afford it.
Every lunch has a different cost. Let's say Kaloa Park. Kaloa Park would probably be the most expensive because the pork and the lomi tomato, that is come in already cut. So that lunch would be somewhere about $6 per serving.
Families in this category can apply to be in free or reduced lunch programs, which, here at Kalaheo High School, 19.43% of our 767 student body can get a piece of. Some schools participate in the community eligibility provision that allows certain schools to serve free meals to all students even if they do not qualify for free or reduced lunches, with 50 schools in the state that participate in this program. However, with serving an entire school for breakfast and lunch, certain problems can arise. Every school needs to follow the strict nutritional guidelines provided by the DOE. The Menu Planning Committee is in charge of analyzing these requirements and assembling a variety of meals that adhere to these guidelines. According to the Hawaii DOE, children who eat school lunches are more likely to have higher nutrient intakes because they are eating a more well-rounded meal than students who just bring lunch from home. The Department of Education is currently looking for local farmers and making it more of a priority to supply fresh, organic produce for school lunches. On the other hand, another problem that our Kalaheo cafeteria staff faces is being extremely short-handed. Over the past several years, the staff has been reduced from 8 to the current 3 workers. Despite the challenges that seem to build up against the cafeteria staff, they are committed on overcoming them and serving the entire school and making it seem like a piece of cake. This is Sora Chang from Kalaheo High School for Hiki No.
Aloha and welcome back to Insights on PBS Hawaii. We are now joined by candidates for Hawaii State House District 50. The district covers Kailua and Kaneohe Bay. Let's meet our guests. Democrat Natalia Hussey Burdick is Chief of Staff in the State House of Representatives and is the Secretary for the Democratic Party of Hawaii. She recently served as a redistricting commissioner on the city's Council Reapportionment Commission. Republican Kathy Thurston is a member of the Kailua Neighborhood Board. Before retiring, she operated her own general engineering construction firm. She's also worked in the tourism and banking industries. Thank you both for being here tonight. Natalia, I want to start with you. We hear a lot about traffic in this district. We know that the city, especially in the Lanikai area, has worked very hard to try to mitigate some of these issues, but time and time again we hear about them. Is there something you think the state could do to help with this?
Absolutely. So that's actually one of the things that I hear about as I go door to door is families are concerned about the walkability and bikeability of their communities. Kailua and Kaneohe especially, I think, could be leaders in the state in terms of having communities that you can walk right to school. I used to do it when I went to Aikahi Elementary, and with more and more cars on the road, it's less and less walkable. Our sidewalks are in disrepair. We need more sidewalks, and we need more complete streets and bike lanes and beakies and things like that. So a lot of this is a city issue, but there are always ways where the city and the state can work together to build a better community for our residents.
Kathy, what are your thoughts on the traffic issues?
I would agree. I think that things that happen, really, we should be collaborating a little bit more. Oftentimes what I've observed, just my short time on the neighborhood board, is oftentimes we point fingers at it's a city problem, it's a federal problem, it's a state. I would really love to see some type of group or ability to work together as various agencies representing different people and coming up with solutions instead of just finger pointing. I think traffic is a great opportunity, infrastructure, many other things that are needed in the Kailua area, especially Oniava. We have a very tight neighborhood where there's barely any room for a sidewalk. So it's like, I think we could do a lot better job in coordinating and working together to solve some of our community's problems.
We have a bunch of questions here, so I want to bring some of them in. Elijah asks over email, how will you bring a fresh approach to leadership in the legislature? What makes you different than the typical politician? Kathy, let's start with you.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm not a politician. You know, I think that's number one that stands out. I think the opportunity to have been running my own business for 30 years. I was in construction for 30 years, started in banking and tourism. I think you get a flavor for the concerns and the conditions that we need to repair just in the business community, but more importantly, being able to create jobs, manage risk. I think in the private sector, we see a lot of things that government does not necessarily address. We don't have a pot of money to go to in private business. We're having to create and take risks and live within budgets and maximize efficiency, minimize things that don't work, and have metrics or measurable items. I think we could use a lot more of that in government. It would probably mean getting rid of a lot of bureaucracy and hopefully seeing some of that trickle down to the working people, teachers, you know, having them, the ones that are on the front lines, being able to maximize their time with our children, workers. But I really think that we need to do a better job and not have such a slanted political agenda, but one that focuses on what's best for the people of our community.
Okay, what do you say to Elijah? What makes you different than the typical politician?
Yeah, thank you, Elijah. I think your question really echoes a lot of the sentiments that I'm hearing from a lot of our neighbors is, you know, you say these things when you try to get elected and then you get into the big square building and who knows what happens and all of a sudden you're not there for us anymore. So I started out as an issue advocate. I've been testifying at hearings ever since I can remember. I've been organizing for issues, getting people to come out and testify, registering people to vote. I know what it's like to be on that side of the table when your legislator isn't listening to you or, you know, when leadership has other plans. And I think coming from that perspective, there's nothing that could happen to me that would change my sentiments from where I came from. I'll always be there with you and be one of the advocates fighting for our people.
Let's talk about housing, and this is a great email. Thank you, Beth Ann, for sending this one in, and I'll give it to you first. I'm a proud mother of 3. My oldest is in high school and will be deciding between college and working. I am concerned all of my kids will not be able to afford a home near us on the windward side. Would you support building public housing in our neighborhoods to help make sure our local families can continue to live, work, and raise their families in the neighborhoods where they grew up? The public housing issue is the question in this email, but also more broadly, to Beth Ann's point, people who are from the district being able to stay there.
Absolutely, and let me tell you, I'm right there with you. I mean, I've moved more times than I can count ever since I was getting my first job at 17, working full-time and supporting myself in my own house. I absolutely support affordable housing, but I think we need to plan it better. And I think what we've seen with the current model is developers come in, they have land, they propose a project, and it's arguably poorly planned. I used to live in the house right next door to the Oneava Street development, proposed affordable housing, and I can tell you better than anybody that those streets cannot handle another additional 200 cars a day every day. So I think our state and county leaders need to be more proactive about choosing the locations. And I'm really excited. I've got 3 locations in mind. That'll be my first order of business when I get into office, to look at those 3 locations and get all the stakeholders together and see if those are feasible, good locations that arguably make sense for the people and for the community and for the environment.
What do you say to Beth Ann?
I think that it's a big concern as a mom, as a grandmother, to see our local kids, our local, our next generation having to relocate. They can't afford to stay home in Hawaii. Cost of living is so high that it makes it prohibitive. I think we are in a unique situation in Kailua as well with our military there. So oftentimes we're seeing, with the subsidies, it oftentimes throws our local people out of the market. And I understand the military also needs housing, but there is a genuine concern. I think we have an opportunity though. $600 million was allotted to Hawaiian Homes. I think there's a big way we can make a dent in the 20,000 wait list to be able to partner, provide some maybe private government partnerships to fast track some of that work. If Hawaiian Homes has the land, I think it would be awesome to be able to fast track, get some private industry involved, some partnerships so that they could go ahead and put some infrastructure in the ground and get some of those homes built. I think it would possibly provide a really good opportunity to not just get our local people off the list and into the homes, but I think it would also provide an opportunity for those that are looking to still be able to take up that inventory that's left.
One of the things that's also stressing inventory, of course, is illegal vacation rentals, and this is a big issue in this particular district.
Yes.
I know that this is something that the city is trying to take on, but do you think that the state should be doing more in this arena?
I really think that if the city is not able to, there's been rules on the books for a while. I think some of the challenge is it's not being enforced. So it doesn't matter what kind of rules we put out there. If we're not enforcing what we already have, I think, yes, we would need the city to do that, but if they can't, then the state should seriously take a look at possibly aiding in that situation, in being able to overall as a state. It's not just a Kailua problem, it's not just a county problem. Mainly here on Oahu though, because of the moratorium, but I think Maui's even looking at some issues as well, where I think we have to have a broader perspective when we make decisions, how we're going to police it and how it's going to be able to come out ultimately the way we intended. I'm a strong advocate for being simple. It's ABCs. There needs to be a level of accountability, balance, and a common sense approach. And I think as a government, as a legislature, as a council, there needs to be a lot more collaborative efforts in trying to get back to the ABCs for the people.
What are your thoughts on addressing the illegal vacation rental issue in the district from the state side?
Yeah, I think Kathy really nailed it when she talked about enforcement. And it makes sense to me why the counties have kind of dropped the ball on enforcement over the last decades, because up until last year, the TAT is a state tax. And so it doesn't really make sense to have a state tax collected on transient accommodations that the county is then tasked with enforcement. And so, I don't really want to point fingers about who's to blame, but I do think that if the counties are unable to enforce, and actually in the most recent Bill 41 did not have an enforcement arm, one of the first bills I would love to write when I get into office is a statewide enforcement agency that enforces all the county's rules and regulations regarding vacation rentals.
I want to bring in this question from Christian on Facebook. He says, or Christian could be a he or a she, but I'll say he for now. Reproductive rights are under threat at the federal level, and so many longstanding constitutional protections are being returned to the state. So it's great to see 2 women running to represent our district. What is your stance on freedom of choice, and what would you do to protect women's rights on this issue?
Yeah, so as a proud Democrat, I strongly believe in freedom of choice. The right to have body sovereignty and the right to choose what happens to your own body is something that has been fundamental and core to my being ever since I knew what it was as a teenager. a lot of people think that in Hawaii we are safe with the recent Supreme Court ruling because it's been enshrined in our Constitution for so long, the right to an abortion. But actually, the Constitution doesn't say anything about abortion or birthing rights. What it says is the right to privacy, which is on that same shaky ground as what just got overturned on the national level. So one of the big things that's going to be coming up in the 2023 legislative session is how do we enshrine those protections in the Constitution? How do we change our HRS to properly define what a viable fetus is and what age you can do the abortion? But honestly, none of that matters to our neighbor islanders because the right to an abortion means nothing if you don't have that access. And I know that many of our neighbor island residents have no access to these critical life-saving services.
What do you say to Christian?
Well, I say I'm a child of the 50s. I grew up in the 70s. It's when Planned Parenthood got into our schools. I was a student then that was actually sent to Planned Parenthood. So I am a product of experiencing the emotional and mental challenges that come with making very difficult decisions. With that being said, I am proud to say I'm pro-life. Also, with that being said, I think we need to do more to be able to help counsel properly young ladies or people that are put in situations that they find themselves unexpectedly to be in it. I don't think it should be used as birth control. I think that we need to do a better job at providing for women and for counseling them to see what else can be done. I think that when we start taking viability of a fetus, wow, we're walking on some shaky ground there. But what I would like to say is, as a people here in Hawaii, we've had these certain laws on the books since the 1970s. I think what Roe v. Wade being reversed did, it may not be popular for some people, but I think it actually put things in proper perspective. It had a decision that was made in the judiciary that was put back in the hands of the people. So I think legislatively, we have a lot of opportunities, if we don't like something, to act on it. Collectively, though, I do think we need to start looking at the mental viability and also some of the things that we can do to educate people to be able to provide for their needs. If people are making decisions because they're afraid they're not going to be able to afford to care for their children, I think that needs to be addressed, and I don't think we've been doing a very great job at addressing mental and health needs in that area.
Let's talk a little bit about tourism tonight. Kailua is a favorite spot for tourists, of course, but also for many residents. And a lot of folks feel like we're out of balance. We got kind of relief when the pandemic happened, and now everybody's back and enjoying our islands. That is a double-edged sword. What do you think we could do to better manage tourism, specifically in this district?
I think that's a really good point. I think walking around door to door, which is the favorite part about running as a candidate, I'll tell you, it takes a while, but that's the best part, listening to the people. And I think I hear that over and over again. People aren't so much against tourism, but I would put responsible tourism as the desire for the community. We see businesses taking people out to the mokuluas and leaving their opala out there. It's like we need to be able to have responsible managing tourism. I think that where we could start in our community is to just really have special places where, we have great neighbors in A and B and different people in our community, having educational places where tutus can come in and educate people as to what's the responsible thing. Teach them about our culture, teach them about our ways, why we wouldn't overuse the ocean, why we wouldn't just abuse the hiking trails. I think we need to do a better job. I think CNHA getting this contract with for the marketing arm with HTA, I think that's a big start in the right direction. I love that they'll bring a cultural component that will be able to educate and prepare people. I think, and to take their slogan, Hulihia, I think we're due here in Hawaii for kind of this upheaval or a shift. I think the benefit, maybe there were a lot of things that didn't benefit our people through COVID, but I think one of the benefits is we were able to see how our beaches were restored, how everything, our environment recovered. It was wonderful. And I would take pictures on my beach walk and post them to my Instagram, and People from across the mainland are all over. They were like inspired to see the beautiful blue colors being restored.
How do you think we can better manage tourism from the state level specifically to affect this district?
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this over the last couple of years, working at the legislature during the pandemic when we saw the slowdown of tourism. I've facilitated meetings with international tourism experts and HTA. And I gotta say, HTA has been doing a better job with the new CEO who recently got appointed. They've been doing a lot more management rather than marketing. So the bill that I helped write last year, HB 1899, which switches HTA's guiding statute from tourism marketing to tourism management. Because then it doesn't matter who is the CEO, their guiding statute tells them that they have to do management. And this sort of regenerative tourism model would benefit, would improve the communities that are being, right now are being disadvantaged the most. So whereas instead of maybe like going to the beach and leaving your opala everywhere, you might tour a kalolo'i or a solar energy farm and teaching them about taking care of the land that they are here to visit.
Let's get in some more viewer questions. This person is asking, do you support term limits for state lawmakers? What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I'm really excited to work on, there's with the recent ethics scandals, the House has appointed a commission on ethical standards, and they're going to be recommending to the legislature several government reform measures, which I think are critical. But before we can pass, the measures to improve our education or our environment, we need to address these critical ethics reforms. So term limits are absolutely something that I support. Other things like banning fundraising during legislative session or improving the lobbying laws. There are so many ways that we can improve transparency and accountability to the people in the State House.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Do you support term limits for
Absolutely.
state lawmakers? And what about this corruption issue that she brought up?
Absolutely. I think three of the keys or the values that I'm running on are aloha, leadership or tested leadership, and trust. I think what's happened, they don't trust our politicians or our leaders. In fact, a dismal less than 25% of our population has voted. And I think that a lot of people feel this sense of hopelessness. When you have a legislature that they exempt themselves from a sunshine law, I think we need to start there. I think we need to be a lot more candid. As a Republican, I'm running as a Republican because I think we need a two-party system. I think there's not enough checks and balances. And that's why I'm coming out of retirement, to try to represent our district. I've had a wonderful life, but at the same time, I'm concerned. I'm concerned for not just our current generation, but our future generations. Are we leaving Hawaii as good as we found it? I don't think so. I was raised by my Hawaiian grandmother, a kupuna, and I see the concern. I hear it from the voices of the people that I walk around and get to talk to. It almost seems like there's a deaf ear. The politicians are doing what their platform is instead of the will of the people. I think we need to get back to serving the people and letting their voices be heard.
I know that you both have gone door to door extensively in campaigning. There's a myriad of issues, whether it's affordable housing, affordability in general, homelessness. The list is long. What would be your top priority if you were elected to this office?
That's a tough one because there's so many important ones, right? I'd have to say probably crime. Crime and cost of living, as well as education. I'd have to limit it to those three. Crime, it's sad to hear people saying, kupuna that have lived in the district for decades, saying that, Kathy, we're afraid to go out. We go out, do our grocery shopping, and we go home right after. And I think we've seen just the past few weeks or the few months, we've seen an acceleration in crime, even in Kaneohe and Kailua. What we do need, we have empty positions at HPD. I'm against defunding the police. I think we need to fund them fully. I think we need to support our men and women in blue, as well as our firefighters, our frontline people, our EMTs. I think they're important to maintaining the safety in the community. It also brings confidence, I think, to the people where they feel very hopeless. So it's crime. I would say education. I think key to education is, sex and second graders should not be said in the same sentence. But we're seeing that with HB 1697, where the Democratic Party is pushing a platform that would train teachers to be able to go ahead and be trained in sex education to actually touch our children. I'm concerned. As a grandmother of 5, are we teaching the right values? So I would say I'll stop there. Cost of living, I think. Sorry about that.
No,
Thanks.
no, I get it.
There's so much.
I want to give you an opportunity to respond to her last point, because obviously you work with the Democratic Party, and also what is your top priority?
So in terms of HB 1697, I think a lot of things got lost in translation. That bill is really just a resource to train teachers on how to respond to a child who tells them, I'm confused about my gender. How do you respond to that? The teachers need unified training so that they're all saying the same thing instead of, just depending on what the teacher thinks. So.
And your top priority?
The bill, you should just read the bill. It's not as scary as a lot of people made it seem like. My top priority would have to be homelessness. I've seen it on the rise ever since I was a child growing up in Kailua and walking to school. Homelessness is a multifaceted issue that doesn't just have one, golden key solution. We need more social workers. We only have a handful that service the whole windward side from Waimanalo to Kahului. We need to invest in transitional services like IHS and Work Hawaii, which is like it's a program where you can work 20 hours a week and they give you a housing voucher. And we need truly affordable housing in locations that make sense. So high density in the urban cores, the places that are already developed, that we don't have such a heavy burden on the environment.
Okay. I know we covered this a little bit with the question about you being a typical politician or not, but what do you think makes you uniquely qualified for this seat?
So I've been working at the Capitol for the last 6 years, and I've learned a lot. And one of the things that I've learned is how long it takes most newly elected officials to really understand how things work there. I have been writing bills for 6 years. I know how the whole process works. I know how to pass a bill, and I know the different levels of government and whose kuleana it is to do what and what mechanisms exist. So, for example, different kinds of funding that we can leverage from the federal side. There's different grants we can apply for, and just it takes a lot for somebody to just step in. Usually it takes about 4 years to really understand the requirements of the job and to be able to do a good job. So I can hit the ground running and just start right away. I already have good relationships with most of the other elected officials, and I work really well with them, and so ready to deliver for our community.
Kathy, what do you think makes you uniquely qualified?
Thank you, Natalia. I think that's the exact reason why I would be a better candidate. And it's because I don't think we should be taking 6 years or 4 years to get up to speed. I think what has been the challenge here in our state is decades of one-party rule. We need to get back to the ABCs: accountability, balance, and a common sense approach. And I think what I do bring is a lot of experience, not just in tourism, not just in banking, but in contracting. In contracting, we need to work with multiple disciplines. You're working with engineers, you're working with architects, you're working with mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, just a wide slew just in the design phase. And then in order to make a project, multi-million-dollar projects that I've worked on, in order for that to be manifest into the reality is not just the permitting process, but you're living within parameters of environmental issues, of permitting requirements, and you still have to be able to put all the subcontractors together, all the suppliers together, and be able to come out with a project that's on time and under budget. Key word, on time and under budget. I think we need a lot more of on time and under budget at the Capitol and here in government. I think that one thing I love about contracting, not just because I was in it 30 years, I'm passionate about it if you can't tell, but I love the economic multiplier effect that contracting brings. With construction, you have people that are going out shopping. They're taking their wives out to dinner. They're taking their family out. They're buying, investing in things. And then you've got to ship in all these supplies. So I think it's a very strong economic factor.
We have just about a minute left, so very, very briefly, I would love to ask you, what's something that we don't glean from your website? What do you wish people knew about you?
I'm fun. I love all kinds of music. I remember Mr. Yonomine in 7th grade at King Intermediate. I wanted to play clarinet. And he said, no, Kathleen, you have the better armature for flute. So I played flute, and I think it was that love of music that he instilled in me at a very young age. I love all kinds of genres of music, so music.
And what about you? What's something you wish people knew about you?
So I guess what I hope our viewers take home today is that you may not agree with me on every issue. You probably won't. You're never going to find an elected official who agrees with you on every single issue. Even me and my team don't agree on everything. But what I can tell you is I will always be upfront with you and straightforward and honest, and we can talk about the issues. I have a very open mind, and I'm interested in learning new things and getting different ideas. So if you want to just have a conversation, you might change my mind, and I'm happy to talk story with you.
Okay, well, thank you both for being here tonight. We do want to thank our guest candidates for House District 50, Natalia Hussey-Burdick and Kathy Thurston. Next week, we will feature 2 candidates in 2 races, State House District 22 and Hawaii County Council District 2. Please do join us then. I'm Yanji Denise for Insights on PBS Hawaii. Aloha and a hui hou.